And what if the truest love isn't the one that begins, but the one that returns? Some stories are written in the stars long before they are lived. There is an invisible thread, as strong as time itself, that binds two souls that recognize each other beyond flesh, logic, and even life. When two souls are meant to be, no matter the chaos around them, the missed connections, the pain, or the passage of time, they search, find, and reconnect because something greater is guiding their reunion. In this video, we will dive deep into the unconscious to understand how Carl Jung's analytical psychology sheds light on this mysterious and powerful phenomenon of soul connections. Prepare to see love from a new perspective, more symbolic, more profound, and above all, transformative. If you believe that destiny unites what is meant to be, leave a comment below. What is true always finds a way. According to Carl Jung, the love between destined souls transcends what is visible and rational. It is not merely about emotional compatibility or physical attraction, but a deep reunion between aspects of the collective unconscious. When two souls recognize each other, they activate ancestral archetypes, primordial images that reside in the human psyche, such as the anima and animus, internal representations of the feminine in men and the masculine in women. This recognition goes beyond the ego and touches the self, the organizing center of the psyche. The experience of finding a destined soul often intensely awakens projection processes. Each person sees in the other the reflection of what is unconscious within themselves. These projections are inevitable and often the first step toward individuation, the central process of the Jungian journey that leads an individual to become who they truly are. However, this union is not free from conflict. On the contrary, the deeper the connection, the more shadows are revealed. In Jungian psychology, the shadow represents everything that has been repressed or denied within us. When two souls meet so authentically, they not only love each other, but also mirror each other, and in that mirror, they see both light and darkness. But it is precisely for this reason that nothing can separate them, for this kind of love is not aimed merely at pleasure or companionship, it is meant for transformation. These souls come together to awaken one another, heal old wounds, and move forward, even amidst falls toward wholeness. The reunion of two destined souls is, according to Jungian psychology, not a romantic accident, but a symbolic manifestation of the individuation process. When Jung speaks of the self, the center and totality of the psyche, he refers to something far beyond the ego. The self represents who we are in essence, yet it must be discovered, rebuilt, and integrated over the course of life. This reunion between souls is often a powerful catalyst for that process. It is not just a romantic meeting, it is the beginning of a profound awakening. When we encounter someone we feel we have known forever, even if it is our first meeting, we experience something archetypal, a kind of memory that does not belong to chronological time. This sense of reunion has its roots in the collective unconscious. It is as if our souls access deep records, recognizing in the other a symbol of inner unity. It is a moment of revelation. The other acts as a mirror of ourself, reflecting parts of us we had not yet seen clearly. The initial enchantment is often intense, as if something long dormant were finally coming to life. The external world loses some of its importance as everything within us begins to move toward that image. That is because the soul before us does not only show us what we desire, it shows us who we are, or rather, who we can be. Love at this level is a bridge between the unconscious and the conscious, between what we were and what we are becoming. It is common for these encounters to trigger crises, internal ruptures, and deep questioning. This is not a mistake. It is proof that something magnificent is in motion. The self is expressing itself through this bond, demanding that we leave behind illusions and masks and surrender to the true path of the soul. In this process, many painful truths emerge, and the ego, accustomed to control, feels threatened. Yet it is exactly in this tension between ego and self that transformation takes place. These destined souls, then, are not merely lovers or companions. They are symbolic agents of our destiny. The encounter with the other forces us to look inward, to confront everything we have been avoiding, to touch on old wounds that could only be healed by the presence of such an intimate mirror. At the same time, the other sees us with a clarity we have never experienced. This generates a feeling of belonging and a psychic nakedness that few bonds can provide. What is most interesting is that such a reunion often happens only when we are ready, even if it does not seem so at first. The self orchestrates the necessary experiences so that the soul is prepared to see itself in the other. When that happens, the masks fall away, the games cease, and the soul recognizes the soul. This perception goes beyond words and reason. It is a silent, almost spiritual certainty. And even though the path together may be challenging, this connection does not disappear because it is not rooted in fleeting desire, but in the symbol of completeness. Jung said that the process of individuation is like traversing the dark forest of the soul in search of inner light. Having someone by our side who reflects our most essential self can make this journey less lonely, yet also more intense. For the mirror of the self not only shows light, it also reveals the shadows that must be integrated. And that is the great gift of the reunion between destined souls. By touching the sacred in the other, we touch the sacred within ourselves. Whether this connection will survive time, choices, and life's pains cannot be predicted. But one thing is certain: after finding a destined soul, we will never be the same. For this kind of love takes us back home, to the center of our being, to the self that has always been there waiting to be recognized. When two destined souls meet, the emotional impact is often overwhelming. Yet what many do not realize is that this bond is not only a space of fullness and connection, it is also fertile ground for projections and confrontations with the shadow. Carl Jung teaches us that love, especially that which seems inevitable or written in the stars, is where we project the most unconscious content, both light and darkness. Projection is a psychic mechanism through which we transfer qualities, desires, wounds, or fears that we do not acknowledge in ourselves onto the other. In a relationship between destined souls, this phenomenon intensifies because of the deeply symbolic connection involved. The intensity of the connection awakens unresolved aspects of our unconscious and activates dormant parts of the psyche that might otherwise never be touched. We project onto the other the ideal of love, salvation, and healing, but also traumas, anger, and abandonment. At first, this projection can be enchanting. We see in the other everything we have always sought, as if the puzzle of our soul were finally complete. However, over time, this image begins to crack. The other starts to reveal who they really are, and with that, parts of ourselves that we have avoided facing are exposed. This moment is crucial. It is when romantic love disintegrates to give way to true love, one that does not idealize, but embraces the real and complex being. It is at this point that the shadow makes its entrance. Jung defines the shadow as everything we reject or do not know about ourselves. It may manifest as jealousy, anger, resentment, fear of loss, control, feelings that seem to arise because of the other, but which in fact show us our own unhealed wounds. By confronting us with these emotions, the other forces us to look within. And this is one of the most powerful functions of a soul connection, compelling us to see what we do not want to see. These conflicts, far from being signs of failure, are precious opportunities for healing and integration. It is important to understand that true love is not built in the absence of pain, but in the mutual willingness to face pain together. When two destined souls meet, they do not flee from each other when shadows appear. They recognize that these shadows are part of the journey, and that the only way to overcome them is by integrating them, not by denying or projecting them. Overcoming these projections requires courage. It demands that we stop seeing the other as responsible for our emotions and begin to investigate why certain behaviors affect us so deeply. What is this jealousy revealing about my insecurity? What is this feeling of abandonment telling me about childhood wounds that remain unhealed? What does this frustration reveal about my unrealistic expectations of perfection in love? By answering these questions honestly, we begin a process of individuation within the relationship itself. Love ceases to be a field of neediness and becomes fertile ground for mutual growth. A destined soul is not a fairy tale, it is a call to truth. It summons us to consciousness. And when this call is answered with maturity, it deepens the bond on a level that goes beyond the emotional. It becomes spiritual. There are relationships born to distract and others born to awaken. The connections between destined souls belong to the latter. They awaken us because, as painful as it may be, They force us to abandon the games of the ego and come into contact with the fullness of our being. And that includes love, yes, but it also includes anger, fear, shame, desire, and neediness. All those things we were taught to hide or avoid. Accepting the shadow in the other and in ourselves means accepting the humanity of love. It means understanding that the true meeting of souls does not erase our wounds but gives us the chance to heal them with awareness, presence, and surrender. And it is that healing that, in the end, makes these souls inseparable. For they are not chosen only in moments of light, but also in the abysses of darkness. The love between two destined souls awakens something that transcends individuality. It evokes an ancestral memory, a universal myth that dwells in the collective unconscious of humanity. For Carl Jung, the collective unconscious is the deepest layer of the psyche, where archetypes, primordial images that shape our experiences, emotions, and behaviors since time immemorial, are stored. Among these archetypes, perhaps none is as powerful and enduring as that of eternal love. The archetype of eternal love appears in many cultures and eras, from the Greek tales of Eros and Psyche to Shakespeare's tragic romances. It speaks of a bond that defies time, death, and adversity, a love that survives everything, because its origin is not on the surface of life, but in the depths of the soul. When two people meet and feel they were made for each other, that sensation is not just emotional or rational, it is symbolic. They are embodying a living myth. The myth is not a fantasy, it is a symbolic language of the unconscious. Jung asserts that we live myths even without realizing it. When we feel as though we have known someone for a long time, or that an inexplicable destiny unites two lives, we are being overwhelmed by that archetype. It expresses itself through dreams, synchronicities, unlikely encounters, and even the feeling that something greater is guiding the path of love. This type of love attracts us because it touches a deep need for union, for wholeness. The archetype of eternal love speaks not only of union with the other, but also of union with our own self. That is why it manifests so powerfully in deep relationships. It represents the soul's longing for completeness. And that explains why so many people spend their lives searching for someone who makes sense on a level beyond the rationale. Jung also warns us about the danger of being overwhelmed by archetypes without awareness. When we idealize eternal love too much, we risk living in an illusion, expecting perfection where there is only humanity. The archetype is real, but it must be lived with lucidity. The love between destined souls is not a flawless script, but a symbolic path that demands presence and maturity. When we become aware that we are living a myth, we can experience it with greater depth and less fantasy. The collective unconscious acts as an invisible field where these archetypal images circulate and influence our behavior. That is why, when we fall deeply in love, we feel as if we have entered another time, as if everything were predestined. This sense of destiny is the hallmark of the archetype. It creates the perception that there is a higher order behind the apparent chaos, and indeed, on a symbolic level, there is. The archetype of eternal love is not just about romance, it is about integration. It leads us to seek in the other what is missing in us, not to complete us in a dependent way, but to reveal what we already are in essence. It invites us to transcend the ego, to overcome fear, and to recognize the beauty of the bond as a mirror of the soul. In this sense, eternal love is not a fantasy of continuous happiness, but a journey of self-knowledge and expansion. Some may say these ideas are idealistic. However, analytical psychology shows us that archetypes are not mere mental constructs, they are lived experiences. They are living forces that shape the way we love, suffer, and search. Eternal love is one of these forces. It moves us because deep down, our soul longs for something that lasts beyond matter, time, and even death. And it is this longing that makes some connections simply unforgettable. When two souls meet under the influence of this archetype, no logic can explain it, nor can any distance erase it. For what unites them is not merely affection, but a deep remembrance of the original unity, a reminder that we are all fragments of a lost wholeness, seeking to return to the sacred through love. Although the title may suggest that nothing can separate two destined souls, it is important to understand that, in the symbolic realm of Jungian psychology, separations are part of the union process itself. The distance often is not an end but a stage along the way. Just as in the hero's journey of myths, True love also requires trials, losses, cycles of silence and solitude. These moments of separation do not negate the connection. They strengthen it, molding the soul to be ready to love more deeply and truly. For Jung, time is an ally of the unconscious. The self works silently, moving experiences, synchronicities, and even separations as mechanisms to awaken consciousness. When two souls are destined, their reunion is not simply a matter of will or desire, but of psychic maturity. Each person must walk their own path, confront their own shadows, develop autonomy, and grow toward wholeness before a complete union is possible. It is at this point that separation reveals itself as a powerful symbol. It forces us to look within, to abandon the illusion that the other will fill all our voids. In the space left by the distance, we are called to reconnect with our essence. This time apart may awaken feelings of abandonment, pain, or emptiness, but these are not punishments, they are invitations. Invitations for the soul to mature, to stop projecting, and to develop a love that arises from completeness rather than neediness. Often the relationship between destined souls begins with intensity and depth, only to later fragment. The pain of separation seems to contradict the strength of the connection, generating confusion and suffering. Yet when we look with the eyes of the soul, we realize that what is temporarily breaking apart is being purified. There are elements in each person's unconscious that need to emerge, wounds that must be brought to light, aspects of the ego that need to be dissolved. And this can only happen in the silence of separation. This process is especially necessary when the relationship reaches a point where projections start to fall away. The initial enchantment gives way to reality, and a choice must be made, either to flee from discomfort or face it with courage. When true love is present, separation does not destroy, it merely recalibrates. It creates space for both sides to rebuild themselves entirely. Jung teaches us that individuation requires symbolic separation from the other, from our parents, from unconscious patterns, so that our true identity can emerge. Moreover, separation allows the archetype of eternal love to reveal itself in its purest form, not as attachment, but as the fidelity of the soul. Even when physically apart, without contact, and after deep wounds, something remains. That something is not a romantic memory, but the archetypal bond, the silent certainty that there is a purpose behind time. This certainty is experienced in a subjective, intuitive, and inexplicable way, and yet it is undeniable. Many reunions occur only when both individuals no longer need each other to feel whole. When love ceases to be a necessity and becomes a conscious choice, it is then that souls reconnect on a new, much more authentic level, with fewer illusions and greater presence. The pain of the past does not vanish but is integrated. Time, once experienced as absence, transforms into healing, and the reunion ceases to be merely romantic, it becomes spiritual. This cycle of separation and return is natural in soul relationships. It is like breathing, inhalation and exhalation, presence and absence, meeting and parting. All of this is part of the greater process of building true love, and above all, it is a reminder that time is not an enemy of destined souls, it is part of their fate. Those who consciously withstand the pain of separation later discover that they were never truly apart, because the bond between two destined souls is not measured by physical presence but by deep recognition, and once that recognition is experienced, it never fades away. It transforms, matures, and is reborn, but it never dies. In the end, true love is not the kind that keeps us together all the time, but the one that teaches us to remain connected even when life demands distance. Some connections do not follow the logic of the world or obey linear time. They arise from something deeper, quieter, and yet more powerful. When two souls are destined, everything that happens, including pain, silence, and distance, is part of a greater process, the awakening of consciousness. This type of love does not arrive merely to bring comfort, but to reveal who we are, to heal old wounds, and to bring us closer to the wholeness of our being. If this content has touched something deep within you, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And don't forget, the video on the screen now will take you even deeper into this journey of self-knowledge and reunion. What is true always finds a way, always.